The wind screamed over the Montana plains like a wounded beast, tearing through the night and painting the world white. Snow fell so heavy it swallowed the horizon, and even the pine trees seemed to bend in pain beneath its fury. Somewhere in that storm, a horse trudged slowly through the drifts, its rider hunched against the cold. His name was Ethan Cole, a man of few words and too many scars, a widowed rancher raising his little girl in a valley most men had long forgotten. He knew the land like he knew his own heartbeat, but tonight, even he feared the blizzard's wrath. Ethan had been riding back from town with a sack of medicine for his daughter, Lily, who had caught a winter fever. The world had turned white around him so suddenly that he nearly missed the shape in the snow, a small mound at the edge of the trail, something that didn't belong to the land. At first, he thought it was a fallen branch or driftwood, but then he saw the hand, pale, delicate, and unmoving. He jumped off his horse, boots sinking deep into the snow. When he brushed away the frost, he saw a woman, no older than 25, lying there in a torn white wedding dress. Her lips were blue, her lashes frozen, and yet something in her chest still moved, the faintest rise and fall of breath. "Dear God," he whispered, his voice rough with disbelief. He scooped her up in his arms, feeling how light she was, like holding snow itself. Her dress was soaked, her fingers stiff, her pulse faint but alive. Ethan didn't waste another second. He climbed onto his horse, cradling her close, and rode into the storm. By the time he reached his cabin, the oil lamp on the porch flickered like a dying heart. He kicked the door open, calling out, "Lily. Stay in bed, baby. Daddy's got someone hurt." He laid the woman near the fire, stripped off the soaked layers of lace and silk, wrapped her in blankets, and prayed silently as he worked. Hours passed as he fed the fire, rubbed her hands, and spooned warm broth to her lips. He didn't even know her name, only that she wore a wedding dress in the middle of nowhere, and someone had left her to die. When dawn came, the storm had broken. Pale sunlight filtered through the frosted window, and the woman stirred. She opened her eyes, soft hazel against the dim firelight. "Where am I?" she whispered. Ethan leaned forward. "You're safe now. You were half dead in the snow. I found you out near the ridge." Her eyes welled with tears as she realized she was still alive. "I shouldn't be," she said faintly. "I didn't think anyone would come." Ethan frowned. "You were wearing a wedding dress. What happened?" She hesitated, gripping the blanket tighter. "My name's Clara. I was supposed to be married yesterday. But when I told him I couldn't do it, he said he'd rather see me dead than see me walk away. I ran into the storm." Ethan's jaw tightened. He had seen cruelty before, in men, in war, in the world, but something about this hit deeper. "You're lucky I found you," he said quietly. "This land don't forgive mistakes." Clara looked at him, her eyes shimmering. "Why did you save me? You don't even know me." He looked at the fire, his voice rough. "Because I know what it's like to lose someone you love." That night, Lily, a small, bright-eyed girl with her mother's kindness, crept out from her room. She peeked at the stranger sleeping near the fire and whispered, "Daddy, is she gonna be okay?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I think she will." And so the days passed. Clara healed slowly, her strength returning bit by bit. She began helping around the cabin, cooking, sewing, even singing to Lily by the fire. Her laughter filled the rooms that had once echoed with silence. One evening, as the three of them sat together, Clara said softly, "I should leave soon. I don't want to bring trouble here." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "You're not trouble, Clara. You're part of this home now, whether you meant to be or not." Her eyes met his, and for a moment, time stopped. Outside, snow fell gently again, but this time it didn't feel cruel. It felt like peace, like the land was blessing something new. As she turned toward the fire, Ethan thought to himself, sometimes, life doesn't give second chances, but sometimes, it sends you someone lost, so you can both find your way again. And he didn't know it yet, but saving Clara that night would change his life, and his daughter's, forever. The next chapter would reveal what the storm truly brought to their door, not just a woman in white, but a love born from the coldest night of winter. The snow had begun to melt by the time Clara could walk outside again. Spring sunlight glimmered over the valley, dripping from the pine needles like liquid gold. The cabin that had once felt like a lonely fortress now echoed with laughter, the smell of bread baking, and the faint hum of life returning. Ethan Cole watched from the porch as Lily braided Clara's hair near the fence. The child giggled every time Clara pretended to scold her for tugging too hard. For months now, Clara had been part of their small world, healing not just from the cold, but from the pain that had nearly broken her heart. Ethan, too, felt something inside him thawing, something he hadn't dared feel since his wife died 3 winters ago. He remembered the night he buried her, how he promised never to open his heart again. The land had taken too much from him, his wife, his peace, his hope. But somehow, fate had dropped Clara into his arms on a night when he thought he'd lost everything. Maybe that was God's way of telling him it was time to live again. One evening, Clara sat by the fire, sewing a torn saddle blanket. Ethan came in quietly, dust from the stable still on his coat. "You've been busy," he said softly. She smiled, not looking up. "Can't sit still too long. Makes me remember things I'd rather forget." Ethan hesitated, then sat across from her. The firelight danced in his eyes. "You don't have to forget everything, Clara. Some memories make us who we are." She put down the needle and met his gaze. "And some memories make us afraid to love again." Silence filled the room. Outside, wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of rain. Ethan's heart pounded like it hadn't in years. "Maybe," he said finally, "love's not something we find again. Maybe it finds us, when we least expect it." Clara looked down, blinking away the tears that threatened to fall. "You don't know what I've done, Ethan. I ran from a man who said he loved me. I left everything behind." He leaned forward. "Then you did what you had to do to survive. That ain't weakness, Clara. That's courage." For a moment, her trembling hand brushed his, and the touch was enough to speak all the words they couldn't say aloud. Days turned into weeks. Clara started teaching Lily to read, and in return, Lily showed her how to ride a horse. The valley came alive again, wildflowers, soft rain, warm evenings filled with laughter. Yet somewhere deep inside, Clara knew her past wasn't done with her. One afternoon, as clouds gathered over the horizon, a rider appeared on the ridge, tall, dark-coated, with a cruel smirk. It was Marcus Hale, the man she'd once been promised to. His voice carried over the wind. "Well, well, look what the storm brought back to life." Ethan stepped out onto the porch, his hand resting on his revolver. "You lost something, stranger." Marcus sneered. "Not lost. Stolen. That woman belongs to me." Clara froze. The memories hit her like lightning, his threats, his fists, the night she ran. But before she could speak, Ethan stepped between them. "She belongs to no man," he said coldly. "Least of all you." Marcus laughed. "You think you can protect her? You're a farmer, not a fighter." Ethan's eyes hardened. "Try me." For a long moment, the only sound was the wind. Then Marcus spat on the ground and turned his horse. "This isn't over." He rode off into the storm, leaving a trail of dust and tension behind. That night, Clara cried quietly by the fire. Ethan sat beside her, his presence steady, protective. "He won't touch you again," he said softly. "Not while I'm breathing." She looked at him through her tears. "Why are you so kind to me, Ethan? You owe me nothing." He smiled faintly, his rough hand covering hers. "Because you brought life back to this home. Because my little girl laughs again. Because I forgot what hope felt like, until you came." The words broke something open inside her. She leaned into him, and for the first time, she didn't feel broken, she felt safe. Months passed. The seasons changed. Marcus never returned, and the valley bloomed like never before. Clara stayed. She worked the land beside Ethan, cooked for the ranch hands, taught Lily songs that echoed across the fields. Her laughter was now part of the wind, her gentleness woven into every corner of their life. One evening, the sun bled gold over the horizon. Ethan stood by the fence, watching Clara feed the horses. He took a deep breath, then called out, "Clara." She turned, brushing hair from her face. "Yes." He stepped closer, holding something in his hand, a small, simple silver ring. "This belonged to my wife," he said quietly. "But she once told me something before she passed. She said, 'Don't let grief steal your tomorrows.' Clara's eyes widened as tears filled them. Ethan, He shook his head gently. You don't owe me an answer today. But I need you to know. I don't want to spend another winter without you. The world went silent, even the wind seemed to pause. Then Clara took a step forward, her hand trembling as she reached for his. Ethan, you already gave me a new life. And I don't ever want to leave it. He smiled, that rare, quiet smile that said more than words ever could, and slipped the ring onto her finger. Behind them, Lily cheered, clapping her small hands. Does that mean I get a new mama? Clara laughed through her tears and knelt beside her. Yes, sweetheart. You do. And as snow began to fall once more, soft, peaceful, and pure, Ethan wrapped his arms around them both. The storm that once brought a dying bride into his world had now given him everything he'd lost: love, family, and home. Sometimes, the harshest winters lead to the warmest springs.